Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Doctor Who, Season 14, Episode 2, or Season 1, Episode 2. I'm going with the Season 14 numbering, but it's that's going to be so confusing going forward. But it's just like my brain, I can't bring myself to just think of it as Season 1. I have to think of it as Season 14. It's a me thing. Either way, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I wasn't sure where this episode was initially going. Like, I thought it was more going to be like, oh, like you made a deal with the devil, because the episode called like The Devil's Chord. I thought it was going to be more like along the lines of, oh, you're going to make a deal with, like, some musician or whatever is going to make a deal with the devil. You know, the Crossroads story. I thought it was going to be something like that. I was not expecting it to turn into what it did. We got introduced to Maestro, and Maestro gave me a lot, made me immediately think, if you've ever seen the Powerpuff Girls, Maestro kind of gave me him vibes. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Also, the actor playing Maestro, their stage name is Jinx. They apparently won RuPaul's Drag Race, was it season 5? I was like, oh, that's dope. You're a RuPaul Drag Race winner. Obviously, it's not something I'm that familiar with. The drag world, I'm familiar with some drag queens, but like not really. Like, it's just a world I'm not that familiar with. I have a friend, she's really big into like RuPaul and like, you know, the drag world. So I'm sure Jinx might be someone that my friend would probably be more familiar with than I am, but this is my first time ever seeing them. But anyway, tangents and all that aside, but I thought that was kind of an interesting twist where it's like, oh yeah, this kid is Henry, and it's like Abinger. It's like, oh, really? It's really, the name is Harbinger. I was like, oh, like it kind of plays into some interesting stuff because it's very playful, and I was like, I wasn't expecting this storyline to go like I said where it went, and obviously stealing music from people, initially stealing music from that guy, and then gobbling it up. And then just especially like hitting the keys to immediately lead into the Doctor Who theme. I was like, ooh, I love that transition. That's good. That's good. But yeah, like Ruby wants to go see the Beatles, and the Doctor's like, what, really? He'd almost seemed disappointed in her. He's like, that's amazing. He's like, oh my god, in everything I've ever done, why have I never gone to go see the Beatles? I was like, oh, that's dope. Like, want to see them go record. Obviously, the TARDIS is filled with a whole wardrobe. So got wardrobe, eyeliner, wigs, ready for the whole shebang. They also brought up something interesting I wasn't even thinking about, where the Doctor was like, oh yeah, I lived over there. I'm like, what are you talking about? What would you? And I was like, wait, as in the first Doctor? I was like, that's so, because he's like, yeah, I gotta spend time with my grandchild. And Ruby's like, wait, you have a grandchild? You had children? He's like, Time Lords, it's a complicated thing. But he's like, I don't know if my grandchild is okay just because of like what happened to the Time Lords. I don't know if that ever affected her too. So it's a complicated situation. But it's like, I thought that was so fascinating because I was like, oh, because I was, like I said, it didn't even cross my mind when the number 1963 popped. It didn't click my head. Like, oh yeah, that was when Doctor Who originally started airing. So I was like, interesting. So that's kind of like an homage and not. Either way, they were hyped to listen to the Beatles record. Like, oh my god, this is such a monumental moment. And they listen in, and it's like, well, that's not great. They listen to another artist. That's not great. Even the Doctor been like, come on, Scylla, don't let me down. And then they heard like an orchestra band, them sucking. It's like, what's going on here? And ultimately, they end up talking to John and Paul and trying to figure out what's going on here. And for them, it's like, oh yeah, that nonsense is behind us. Like, yeah, like all that silly like singing, who cares? It's like, no, go get a real job. It's kind of like, yeah, we could go ahead and get this stupid music thing done, and we could go on living our lives, go home. You know, John's like, I want to go home, you know, start a family and stuff like that. But both of them still feel it. Like, even with all that, it's still like, but there's some kind of emptiness here. There's this feeling of, why do I feel so sad that sometimes the music comes to me, but the moment like that spark revives in them, Maestro shows up to kind of nip that in the bud. So it's like Maestro is taking all the music in the world, and the Doctor comments on that about like obviously the repercussions for it. Like, you know, the fact is, like, there are no more love songs, there's nothing out there in the world. And ultimately they get Ruby to play a song, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, the doctor talks about like, oh yeah, like when I like kind of watched you for the first time in the Christmas special, I saw you perform. She's like, well, you were there tonight? It's like, yeah. So she performs a song that was helping her friend get over a heartbreak. And then Ruby proceeds to play this song, a very beautiful song on the piano that everyone, even nearby people, are feeling it and they're vibing with it until Maestro comes climbing out of the piano and the doctor and Ruby run. And the doctor mentions like the giggle. I was like, wait, this ain't the same thing. It's like, no, but it's of the same ilk. We end up finding out later on Maestro is the child of the toy maker. So it's interesting because like the whole thing is the toy maker was the embodiment of games, whereas Maestro is the embodiment of music. That's why it devours music. Its whole plan is to devour every until like every it's basically its Magna Carta is going to be kind of this like sound in the universe as like everything kind of like all life kind of it's like there's a specific phrase that the doctor kept using in this episode, and it's kind of like the natural world sound or something like that. I don't remember the exact word and phrasing what it was, and don't fully remember what it meant, but I'm sure that some of that's like, I don't know if that would be a scientific term. It sounds like it's a musical term that I'm not musically knowledgeable enough to really comment on some of that stuff. But either way, the doctor's freaked out because it's like, well, the last time he went toe to toe with one of these godlike beings, it's like it literally left me with my soul ripped in half. And it's like, yeah, a game of catch is what that kind of all came down to. And it's like, because he ends up calling out the Maestro about it, because it's like at least everything was predicated with the toy maker on things kind of being fair, and it's like, yeah, he even the toy maker wouldn't abide by a cheat, and Maestro stops, and it's like, all right, kind of explains everything. But this Maestro is one of those god beings, as he's like, oh, you're from the Pantheon. I even thought that was a chilling moment where it's like the Maestro was looking around being like, oh, where are you? Who's this person that's playing music? They keep hitting the tuning fork on their ring so it reverberates out, and it's like, oh, I'm sensing music out there, and any feedback is coming back to it. But like, oh, where's the music coming from? And the doctor kind of nullifies all sound in the nearby area, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, I can't find you. But then Maestro goes over, uses the tuning fork, and hits a puddle of water, and it's like, right, you might have blocked sound, but you couldn't block vision in that moment, and that was what kind of like, oh, was caught, almost led to the doctor getting caught. But the problem is, like, a lady that was inspired by Ruby's song ended up, performing, and Maestro went over and sounds like straight up murdered the lady with musical notes. A lot of that, like, obviously it's the most recent example I saw, but it makes me think of, God, what was it? Oh God, what was his name? Doctor Strange, like the second Doctor Strange movie, there was kind of like a musical note fight. Like, it kind of made me think of that. You know what else it made me think of? I haven't played this game in so long. I think it was a 360 game. I'm sure I think it's also on the PS3 as well. I'm sure, but it's called Eternal Sonata. It's like a fantasy game that kind of revolves around, is it Frederick Chopin, the musician? Like, he kind of ends up in a like more magical world. It kind of makes me think of that, because there's a lot of like, I mean, once again, the power of music is always represented in stuff and fiction and everything. And I mean, not even just fiction, like what music does. And, people tell you to play music for your baby because it can be soothing and stuff like that. So music does have a part. It isn't just something like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, yeah, the world probably would be shitty and gray and terrible without music, It is a beautiful form of expression that is like, some songs can, you never know how like the arts can change and affect someone's life, especially music, how that can change the world in a lot of ways. Some people would probably scoff at that, but you never know the true impact music can have. And we kind of see that too with when obviously the doctor's freaking out because he's scared, because he's like, I don't know how to beat like this person. And Ruby's like, well, look at me, doctor. I'm still around. Like, I'm from present day. If the world really ended in 63, I wouldn't be here. And I was like, well, you kind of be a paradox, wouldn't you? But I get it. It's like, Back to the Future rules, you'd be immediately vanishing if things had changed. But then they go to present day. I thought the doctor was trying to get her to go back home so he could leave her. I thought that's what he was doing. But he's like, no, I need to show you this. And she's like, wait, what's going on? It's like, this is your home. This ain't no parallel universe. This is your home after Maestro's done what they've done. This is the ripple effect. And she's like, but then why am I still here? Why didn't I vanish? She's like, because you're with me. The TARDIS and being in proximity, I think it's specifically being in the TARDIS and kind of gives you a natural, like, not immunity, but like it does kind of block you from paradoxes to some extent, doesn't it? If I remember correctly. Because all he explained was like basically it's because you're with me. That's the only reason why. But now it's like, but Maestro caught up to them. It's like, oh, it's like you were the one in 63. Oh, here you are with your timey wiminess. You know, you might be brilliant. You might be timey-wimey, but you're no genius. Because it's kind of like a I was about to say, it's kind of like a Rumpelstiltskin thing, but also like a, what was his name? Mixolydic from, Mr. Mixolydic from DC. Or like basically to beat him, you have to say his name backwards. That's how that whole thing works. I don't know if that applies to all fifth dimensional beings or is that just a Mr. Mixolydic, struggle with that name every time, thing. But I was also saying like Rumpelstiltskin, like you need to find out Rumpelstiltskin's name to kind of take him out. Maestro works in a similar way. It's like the devil chord is what, the lost chord as they call it, but like the lost chord brought Maestro. That's why Maestro's in this world. It's like a genius musician found the lost chord, and I ended up being able to kind of punch my way here. You'd need that same chord to push me back, but the only person who'd be able to discover that is a genius. And now the doctor's like, all right, we got to either work our way through figuring out what this chord is. I mean, they managed to escape into the TARDIS, but the problem is everything, and it makes sense, everything in the universe kind of acts on a frequency. Even the TARDIS kind of moves to its own tune, and so Maestro was affecting it. And so luckily, I guess it's almost like a oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know, the immediate like redial, like star 69 type of thing. It's almost like that kind of exists for the TARDIS, where it's like, what's the most recent time frame we went to? We can kind of do that because it's kind of in the more recent history of the TARDIS. So they immediately go back, but they're kind of stuck there with this. So they go to the recording studio, and the Doctor and Ruby are trying to figure out what that tune is, like, you know, but it's like there's so many possibilities, and the Doctor isn't the genius. He's brilliant and clever, but you know that can only take you so far. Ruby ends up getting snatched up by Maestro, and Maestro takes an interest in Ruby's because you were the last human being on this planet that has music in your heart, and I'm going to take that from you. But in that moment, a song plays in Ruby. It's the song she heard the night she was born. It's so powerful. And even then, it's like, no, this is so familiar. Maestro's was like, no, he couldn't have been there. You're like, who? So it seems like amongst these gods and beings, there's someone even they kind of fear and look up to, kind of like, I guess, almost like a Zeus or Odin level person or being. Like, you know, like Zeus and Odin kind of being like the gods of gods type of situation. All father, you know, in the case of Odin. But I guess because of that, whatever it is, it deals with Ruby. And I guess it also plays into why the moment the song comes out of her, it starts immediately snowing. So I'm wondering if that's going to have something more specifically to deal with, like are we going to find out Ruby's like part, like is she going to be like a demigod or something? Is she part god? Like is like her dad a god and her mom was like a regular human, or maybe they both were gods and whatever Ruby had was kind of taken from her. So like that godliness is still there on some level. I'm curious if there's something to that, because even the Doctor brought up like, oh yeah, like everything kind of comes back to Christmas once again. These like connectivity things. I'm like, yeah, at first it was babies and correlates to her as a baby being left at the church. Now it's correlate with Christmas because we see it again with the snow falling down, but also like the Doctor met her like on Christmas, and that song is what like that she was making, you know. It made him go like, oh, you're talented and you're good, and so play a song. And she ended up playing the one she made to help her friend get over a breakup. But the Doctor ends up challenging Maestro to a music battle, which is pretty dope. It was at first it's kind of like, you play something and then that person plays something, you kind of have to copy it. It's just about kind of keeping up pace and kind of outpacing the other person. And the doctor wins that round of that, that tit for tat situation, but it's still not enough. And now the doctor, he talks about like, right, you talk about me finding this symbol, and it's like music is, based on like your experiences. And he's like, I've lived a very long time and I've experienced every single thing, and because of that, he ends up getting the chord right on every. He's feeling it and experiencing it. He's taking everything that's ever happened to him, and he's feeling his way through, and he ends up getting most of the notes for the chord except for the last one. And so they both get grabbed, stuffed inside of instruments, are going to suffocate. The piano was snatched away from him and knocked away, and lo and behold, who runs into it? As John Lennon. But then he isn't alone. Who walks beside him, and it's Paul McCartney, and together they find the final note to the chord, and because of that, Maestro was defeated. It's like, yeah, it took two inspired geniuses to kind of finish that off, and that swell of inspiration. Once again, that one note leads to another note, which leads to another note, so on and so forth. And yeah, just thought that was kind of an interesting wrap up to it all. And because of that, music has been restored to the world. But that does set up the future threat, because I didn't even consider that being the storyline for this season of interesting. So the Doctor's probably going to have more run-ins with other gods like the Toy Maker and Maestro. So I was like, that's interesting. But when it's all said and done, though, it's like, oh yeah, like, there's one thing that, I've learned from every adventure I've been on. It always ends with a big twist, and it turns into a big musical number. I was like, well, it makes sense. This was not in a more traditional sense, but it was in fact a musical episode in a more truest sense. But like not in like television and movies. Like when you think musical, you kind of thought more of that, but it was still like in the genre of things, it was a musical episode in that regard. But yeah, having a big song and dance number, I really loved the whole situation. It was a nice bob and vibe, and I thought it was kind of nice. I even love like them being on the street, and obviously like the iconic was it Abbey Road or whatever, just like from the Beatles like cover, and just like them stepping on like the parts of it, and obviously it's like a keyboard. And I was like, oh, that's really neat. What I thought was kind of an interesting thing was that kid Henry, that was Maestro's like concoction that they made. I was like, oh, he's there. So I don't know if that's just supposed to be like ignore all this stuff is kind of like a fantastical thing that's happening. But I don't know if that really, really happened at the end, or whether that's just like the power of music kind of makes you think it was. Like very much in the musical thing of everyone sings, but no one's really, there, you're expressing yourself that way, but it's almost kind of all like, I don't know how to properly explain it. It's like, it's one of those weird things of musicals, like when it's a thing of like, how do you put in a word the thing that musicals do? You're just like, oh yeah, that's a musical thing, but you're like, what is the actual word and phrasing of like, when you burst in a song, but no one in the musical thinks it's weird, because it's just like, that's how it is. That's how it's being expressed. Like you don't, unless it's a fourth wall breaking thing, you don't acknowledge it. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is happening, and no one acknowledges it. So I don't know if it was meant to be that or what, or whether it's like, no, that really did all happen because everyone was so inspired and music was restored to the world, and it kind of, swelled up in everyone to the point they couldn't do anything but express it. So very fascinating. I mean, for one, just ending on like a more higher note like that, especially after kind of the craziness of it all. But I do like I said, the Maestro gave me like big hymn vibes, but like the bombastic performance and just that shift in tone of just kind of, I mean, very much kind of like the Toy Maker, where you're like, oh, there's a little silliness to it, but there's also like an unnerving scariness as well that I think the actor Jinx, like, she did a fantastic job. So I just thought that was just kind of neat. Her real name is Hera, but like her stage name is Jinx. I can't remember. It was something like, I don't want to butcher her last name, so I'm just going to call her by her first name. But just thought they did a fantastic job. So just kind of like a fun but eerie episode, and like I said, it kind of seems to set the stage potentially. Like once again, we're egging more and more about Ruby's past and who she really is and what her birth might pertain, especially if we're dealing with more of these godlike beings in this universe or outside of the universe, like the Toy Maker and Maestro. So it's going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and Goodbye.